Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back once again to episode 200 of the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Greg Elliott, and today, joined by the full Southampton cohort, my good friends and wonderful co-hosts. Oscar, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Zach, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, man, 200 episodes. That's wild. Absolute. How have we talked about Southampton this much? So much of it's been the same.
We've had a wild ride through what you might generously describe as a tumultuous season.
You can't call it as tumultuous, it's disastrous. You had two of the worst wins that I can possibly remember. And we managed to get a draw that felt like a win last weekend that felt like possibly the worst game of football I'd ever watched. Yet, so important. And obviously, we just watched the playoff finals as well. And, you think back to that day at St Mary's when we beat the Baggies and you compare it to this last season, Greg. I'm pretty sure the only reason I'm so locked into Southampton and not as disillusioned as the rest of them is because we do this daily podcast. So I guess thank you for this daily podcast so I can continue to be tortured by the football club that I love.
Yeah. I mean, that was a pretty crazy semi-final last night, right? Like, last minute of extra time winner.
Yeah, it's probably one of the best games of football I've seen in a long time. Like, I had this weird thing where, like, after I watched it, I joined a group of my gaming friends on Discord, and it's trying to explain and convey the emotion. Like, how can you just not love football? And trying to explain, I sound like a madman. They're just like, yeah, okay, buddy, it's just some people kicking a ball. I'm like, no, it's so much more. Like, just watch it, you'll understand. And they're never gonna. But yeah, I was crazy, very neutral as well. Just proper heart in your mouth stuff for most of the game for both sides. And then it's that sort of the fact that it was the last kick of the game. Madness, absolute madness.
Something about playoff football that just brings out the most exciting games. Just that do or die mentality that comes from it effectively being a cup final.
But I think what's important though is playoff football with a point, right? Because the MLS do the Super Bowl styles thing where they have playoffs every year, but then they have playoffs in the North and the South, and if there's nothing meaningful behind it, I think that it can become a bit saturated. But I think where it is promotion to the Premier League, and as much as we complain about it, and we've hated being here pretty much all of this season, and we're now actually going to get to go to Coventry next season in the Championship, which is wonderful. But the fact that regardless, we all know how important that moment was and how great that feeling was, and not over just that game. You obviously had Wembley and the sort of fear and the wonder of getting back to what, as some people call the best league in the world, other people refer to it as now essentially the Farmers League, considering PSG beat every single English team. So, but either way, I think with so much on the line, and obviously Sunderland had their documentary and all that jazz. So now all they got to do is get past Sheffield United,
the battle for who's going to go up and challenge our Derby's points record.
Can't wait. It's going to be awesome. One of the things I did note, which is Saints related, Ben Brereton-Diaz was not to be seen in the Sheffield United game at all. And apparently there's rumours of him having a long-term injury, which is why we wouldn't have just recalled his loan at that point, unless he's actually still going to get bought by them. So I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one. Still don't know how. I think we both kind of all in agreement, right? That we just kind of forgot he existed after he left.
Yeah.
It'd be weird if he comes back at this point.
Just one of those strange, disastrous signings at the start of the season that just didn't work out at all.
Yeah. Alas.
Seems like a distant memory now. But look, speaking of bad transfer news and Saints related, the rumours already rife and speculation growing. The obvious target, Ramsdale, who I think it's safe to say we all assume is going to leave in the summer, linked with Newcastle and Man United now, so it's going to be one of them, right?
One of them is out of the fire and into the frying pan, and the other one probably looks like a good move for him, but at the same time, depends if he stays number one forever. It's that weird thing that he's had a lot of his career, right? Where he's had to kind of go to these other clubs because he's too good for the mid-table teams, but not good enough for like the top teams, so he ends up just getting loaned out to the bottom teams. And then I guess it would be nice for him to I guess actually find a home, because I've considered the transfer the whole of this season to be like essentially a loan signing, right? Like we knew unless we were actually going to stay in the league, which as we kind of got to like November, knew that there was going to be extremely doubtful that was the case. Extremely doubtful that was the case. That he was probably going to be gone. So fair play. But I do think that going to Manchester United at this point, like Manchester United aren't far off where we are.
I mean, it would be really funny for him to go to Manchester United and be his fifth relegation under his belt, right? Like that would be football heritage.
Yeah, I guess so.
At this point, there aren't many clubs in the Premier League he hasn't been linked with, are there? Because I'm fairly sure
really.
Bournemouth, Chelsea, Man U, Newcastle, Brentford, maybe at one point.
Does somebody want a good goalkeeper? And the answer to that question is always yes. So he's probably going to be linked with a lot of places. But again, it's like he wants to have first team football, but also subsequently probably doesn't want to drop down to a lower level. Which you could arguably say that when he came to us, that we were all really surprised, right? Like that was a bit of a coup, and it worked out as a coup, because if not, like our goal difference at this point would be significantly below Derby County's.
Yeah, it would be horrendous. The amount of games that he's maybe not even quite kept us in, but like kept the score down to not complete embarrassment levels is.
And on top of that, we keep being linked with goalkeepers as well, which shows you that they're already starting to, go down that road and try and find somebody to replace him, which means that, there's probably already bits and pieces happening in the background. We've still got 2 games to go before it is just going to be transfer speculation for most of the summer.
Yeah, that's crazy as well. It feels like the season's done.
It's because we beat the points record, that is.
The other links I've seen this morning are Matty Fernandez linked with Nottingham Forest. It's not one that I think any of us wanted to see.
No, and Newcastle as well, mate. I think it's devastating, but is anyone really hugely surprised? He's been an absolute talent for us this year, so I'm not really shocked that he's been linked with a bigger move. We hoped he would fly under the radar, but as you pointed out in your analysis, Oscar, like when you get ratings of over 7 in our team consistently every game for the entirety of the season, like, it's we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe we'll put a ridiculous price tag on him, like £100 million. That'll do. Apparently,
we should be able to get good whack for him because he's on a fairly long contract, as far as I know. Maybe they had a relegation clause in there. Who knows? But we should get a good amount for him, I would have thought.
Yeah, it'll be very sad to see him go. I still hope that we can keep on hold of him, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a long summer regardless. To have these already starting to come into the fold and be as frequent as they are it's going to be a really long summer. All right, well, I've got some other stuff I want to talk about, but first a message from our partners, Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements, designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Okay, and we are back. So I wanted to talk a bit. We talked earlier in the week about the season ticket drop and the reduction in the length of the payment plans available and the sort of affordability that might have, and that seemed to be the controversial part of that. And I've seen some speculation online that I wanted to talk about a bit and discuss, and that's that perhaps some of that is the misuse that they have blamed it on has come about as part of the club's own doing. So it was noted, of course, when we were selling tickets for Wembley that tickets for the 24-25 season tickets for the 24-25 season were being counted as part of the eligibility criteria. So some people were just purchasing tickets on the payment plan, making that like first payment of 70 quid or whatever it was. and then getting their Wembley tickets and immediately cancelling the plan, which is it's hard to say how you wouldn't see that happening from a Saints perspective.
If you're trying to convince people, because obviously the problem I have with that is like they've tried to use that as a, well, if you get a season ticket, we'll let you go to Wembley, and then just apparently just did not think of the consequences of that action whatsoever, and then have gone, well, it's everyone else's fault. I'm like, I feel like you should have maybe, you're right, Greg, thought about it just a little bit when it comes to setting up something like that. Like we've worked in an industry for a long time, me and you, Greg, where like decisions like this happen, and you know for a fact that the person who came up with it just didn't think about this. It wasn't discussed in a way. It was we can get everyone. We can, and you talked about how like we broke records for season tickets. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how many in those season ticket sales numbers are people that have paid for the entirety of their season ticket over the season, and not season tickets where they've signed up just to basically get to Wembley. But I think that also is an indictment of sort of how difficult it feels for people to get tickets for big games like that, and how
it wasn't that difficult to get ticket. I got a ticket for Wembley, and I'm not a season ticket holder, and I go to games when I can, as often as I can. But I managed to get one. All right, it was, it might as well have been the helicopter of how high it was. But, it wasn't that difficult to get one to necessitate spending 70 quid on top of the ticket price. So I don't really understand, But even so, for the club to use that is pretty poor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a real poor show. I don't think we've seen anything from the club to suggest that they're going to backtrack on that. They seem to have doubled down. I actually spoke to someone at the club tangentially because I'm having some trouble spending the retail vouchers that were benefits of last season's season ticket. It's a different issue, but yeah, they said that there's basically no chance they're going to renege on it because of the amount of work it caused the ticket office. But it's it is sad to see that a lot of fans are going to be priced out because of that decision, and the fact that it was a sort of a decision that was worsened by their own earlier decisions as well. Just I think show, really.
It's even more sad, mate, when you say about like being priced out, it's like you yourself haven't even decided whether or not it's affordable for you next year. And I think that's devastating. We have been doing a daily podcast. We are on episode 200. Like, you can't say that you aren't a dedicated Saints fan. And like, you are at a point now where genuinely it's going to be unaffordable to you because you can't pay outright, and there's an expectation to. And like, I know we discussed how it's good. I know you guys discussed in a brilliant episode about it the other day about how, not every club does this, but it's like anything in life. Like, we worked at a place a long time ago, and we've talked about this before, Greg, where there was an attendance bonus, and all the people that worked there would get that attendance bonus if they went to work 5 days a week. The idea behind it was it would stop people from leaving, having sick days, because then they wouldn't get their attendance bonus. And then they took that away, and everyone that joined after didn't know any different. So it was just how it was, and it wasn't a problem. But obviously, a lot of the people who that was a thing they relied on, a thing that they were used to, it was taken away from them, and they felt really, really hard done by. And I think that this is an example of that. Of just because other clubs don't do it doesn't mean that the impact will not be felt, and the impact will be felt probably by the poorest people that go to watch football. And it's just a damning indictment of, I think, the way that it's going. But that's not just our club. That's football in general, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's starting to go towards, they would I'm not saying they wouldn't rather have the local fans from Southampton, etc., but especially in the Premier League, it is, certainly a more global audience they're trying to attract, and quite happy to have people from, all around the world come, which, isn't a bad thing, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the ones that have, been there and built it from the bottom. I thought it I don't know if either of you went to Russell Martin's testimonial game, or not testimonial, the one they did with the Saints Legends.
Carry match, yeah.
Yeah, and like, even in that, there was an opportunity, and, fair play, it was to, it was money that went to Saints Foundation, so it was good, but, it was, they sold a place to a fan, and, who knows, it might, but they selling places to people to play on the pitch with, club legends, and it just comes down to how much money you've got, and it's, it's just strange or not strange and not surprising, but can be a bit frustrating to see it heading down that way.
it's also the difficulty, and I think maybe it might change a little bit in the Championship. But like even Greg, you were talking about it at the City game, where like half of the people behind you were people that you'd never seen before, who spent most of the time on their phones and had half and half flags because they are tourist fans. And like I can understand that is just going to be part of sport in general, and that is ultimately what I think a lot of these leagues want. Is they want people that are just going to come and inject money. But like I think you summed it up the best, Greg, where it was like you go to football to watch the football. Like I know that the commercial opportunities are there,
Yeah, well,
but
that's the problem, right? I'm not the type of person they want to attract to the stadium because I'm interested in the football and not buying 20 beers and 3 hot dogs.
And that's the problem, is that they can't actively say that, and they will put out things that pull on your heartstrings to make sure that the people who have been going continue to go. But yeah, it is a bit of a weird one, and is going to be something we see across the board, and you are already starting to see it, like even at places like Manchester United, right? I don't know if you've read about this season tickets, like where some people are having their seats being taken away because they're turning it into like newsstands, and this is going to be corporate only seating and stuff like that. People that have sat in a seat for like 70 years at the expense of somebody that's going to come in and pay significantly more money. And it's because it's a business at the end of the day. It's just that there is sometimes a fundamental forgetting of the core of it, which is that it is like football, and that if you're going to price out the working people and the local people, if you say we all get priced out and then we drop down a league and we drop down a league again, who's going to those games? That's the other thing about it, is it's a fine balance. But I just think that blaming it on things that they have caused because they didn't do a lot of due diligence beforehand, because it feels like it was very much like, oh, we've got into the player final, we could give this as a benefit, and that was spun up in a meeting and immediately just rolled out. And if there is more thought that's been put behind it, fair play, but they still missed out a crucial element, which is you could just sign up and then cancel. And also, I can't blame people for doing that if they're that desperate to go and watch their team at Wembley. People have spent more money on stranger stuff. Do you remember that? There was that guy who, from the West Ham fan, that went all the way to Ghana before they signed Kudus to literally just go and watch Kudus play. Like don't ever underestimate the passion of football fans. So although it might have been an easy ride for you, Oscar, there might be people that were worried and just wanted to make sure they got tickets for them and their if you've got large families, you want to get the whole extended family, you sign up for season tickets for all you and your kids and whatever, and then maybe you cancel your kids' ones, but you actually go every week. So it isn't as malicious as it sounds, but then there's lots of circumstances with it. It's just a bit gross, but then it's always a bit gross, isn't it? That's unfortunately what you either do that or you end up running out of money, and that's the issue. Right, I've talked a lot.
Right. Well, I've got more talking points, but first I think we should take a little break and have a message from our partners at Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr. Alright, one of the other things I wanted to touch on is almost related, I guess, to the tickets. I've seen a few people in the discourse saying that they're not going to be renewing their tickets next season because of the stadium changes, and they just weren't happy with the way that sat for them this year. And so I guess I wanted to have us open it up slightly and have maybe a bit more of a discussion about, do you think the changes worked? Obviously they're here to stay, they're not going to be reverting at any point, but do you think the pros of those
I think it's difficult to
outweigh
judge
the cons?
this year, really, because no matter where the away fans were or home fans were, it wasn't exactly going to be the bubbliest environment. So I don't think you can really judge it on this season. I like the idea of it. It's a bit rogue, and I don't know. You sit in the Northern, don't you? For those that sit in the chapel, seeing the away fans giving it large to like the kids and the family stand is a bit strange. But I think it's difficult to judge really based on this year. I think the idea is a sound of principle, and it's always going to be a thing that some people don't like. They'd be moved from their seats, but it's a thing that a lot of people called for. I don't think they would have done it if it wasn't the vast majority that were doing it. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I think that, I mean, to be fair, I've only seen a few people complaining of that, and I'm sure that the problem is you can't please all the people all the time, right? But I'm sure that it has had an impact on some people. It's just, I think on the whole, it's been a largely positive change, and obviously it's not just the sort of where they're seating people they've changed. They've made that adjustment so they can add in things like a pub and fan zones and all the other sort of stuff that comes with it. But it was just an interesting sort of
I
point.
think there were some discussions. I know there was a bit of a movement, either last season or a couple of seasons ago, the back of the chapel, where they tried to sort of add a bit more atmosphere in the chapel stand. And I think next season, I'm sure that I've seen somewhere that there's quite a large bulk of people that are looking either formerly Itchen North or in the Northern that are potentially looking to move across to the chapel to try and generate a bit more of that atmosphere.
I think
So
a lot
maybe
of
that
people
might be something that would be interesting.
I think it's a lot of people miss the back and forth, which is what a lot of the sort of more vocal fans tend to go for. I don't know, Zach. You got any thoughts on it?
I just remember because I asked you that question. If you remember rightly, I
Yeah.
can't remember. You were sat at a game, I think, at the time. It's actually, do you genuinely think like the changes have been beneficial or not? And I think that you summed up really well, Oscar, in the sense of it's really hard to judge this season because we haven't had a lot to shout about. But I think Northam's still been noisy regardless. So I think that you give them something to shout about. And I think that it's going to be incredibly beneficial both for performances and, we're going to have a bunch of new players who are going to come in and they are not going to be aware of how the atmosphere at St Mary's has been. They're not going to know about, how it was flat and where once the away fans were. All they're going to realistically see is an entire stand full of people, hopefully cheering them on. And then a corner of away fans, hopefully surrounded by, again, I feel bad for sort of the families and things. I used to sit in chapel quite a lot. One of my friends had season tickets right at the front, so I used to sit with her quite often. And then obviously complete switch now that because whenever I go, I usually end up going with Greg. So now completely the other opposite end of the scale into the Northern. And there will be people that will be massively disrupted by the away fans being there. And that kind of banter, because it is weird, the idea of like a family with like two kids sat down having to deal, with jibes and swearing from a bunch of like, people screaming over. But then that is also part of football.
Caveat that with it really depends on the children, because I think that's the atmosphere that my ones thrive in. So
to be clear, mate, you specifically took them to Northern to character build them. There are a lot of people that would just want to go to the football to watch the football and like see their favourite players and stuff, and don't want to get made fun of if they have their little signs.
I feel like I need to defend myself here. We tried taking them to the quieter stands, and they were too noisy to handle that. So
that's true, and that's because, mate, your kids are like you and me, where I become almost a different person at football. That is just a thing that happens. But yeah, I think that it has been really, really hard to judge this season, but I think that next season we could actually see the benefits of it wholeheartedly. It's just waiting, and you're right. There's never going to be a solution that pleases everybody, but it was a thing on the cards for a long, long time. People constantly wanted it. Happened. Yeah, there were other changes that I don't know if we needed a pub. We got one. That doesn't really matter.
From a selfish perspective, it used to really bug me that if I was going to walk back, and I quite often park up near sort of Shamrock Quays, and to walk back, you'd have to cut across where the away fans were, and they wouldn't let you. It's like, mate, we've just drawn 2-2 with Everton. It's hardly going to kick off. Do not make me walk around the whole stadium to go 10 metres. So from that perspective, I'm quite happy, but I suppose it flips to the other side now. But
yeah, because that's obviously where I used to go to chapel quite a lot. That was the way I used to walk in. So like half of Southampton that I used to walk, the way I used to walk to the stadium, just the route I'd pre-planned in my head, is now had to change to deal with that.
Yeah,
so
you like can't go any of the like industrial estate way, right? They don't even let you in that bit. You have to go all the way down to the main road and round, which is strange.
That's just going to be part and parcel of it, right? Like, and especially next season, they're going to have to probably come up with a better idea, considering Hampshire Constabulary have put £250,000 aside to deal with the policing of both of the Portsmouth and Southampton matches. So apparently, they're hoping not to use it all.
Such an interesting one. That's such an interesting one for me, because in a lot of ways football has come a long way, and you would like to think that sensible heads prevail, but it also has been so long since the last South Coast derby, but
Am I right in thinking the last time a Portsmouth fan punched a horse?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
went to prison. There was also, it was the first time I ever got a noise complaint from my neighbours. I had a letter posted through my door. I went and apologised to them in person, and that really threw them off because I think they were trying to do the passive aggressive thing where I didn't actually make a big deal out of it. Did feel really bad. Was definitely swearing at the top of my lungs. So probably on me a little bit, but it's the fact that it's been that long, and like you said, Greg, you'd like to think that it's come a long way. But also, like, how do you feel about taking both your kids? You said your daughter's already trying to lay the groundwork to go. My wife doesn't want me to go.
Yeah, the vote is out. One of them is definitely not going.
That's fair.
I do wonder what they'll do for that game, because presumably they won't want Portsmouth fans next to the family stand for that.
Yeah.
This is some of the weird things, right? And maybe this is where they probably never planned for us to have to play Portsmouth unless it was a cup game in like 30 years' time. Yeah. But unfortunately, as fate would have it, we will be in the same division next season, which is I don't know, harrowing, sad, exciting.
I think it is exciting, but it's just going to be one of those interesting stories that sort of winds its way into the season and how it plays out, and it'll be fascinating to see how that plays in. I mean, even down to whereabouts in the fixture list those fixtures come really could be like pivotal to the season either way. It's going to be, that is, whatever happens, it's going to be a game that drives or turns momentum because it's going to be seen as such an important part of the season. So,
and that's the fascinating thing as well, is like new players coming in, because we're going to probably have quite a clean squad next year, as in not we're not going to have a lot of veterans apart from maybe Stevens and a few others. There's not going to be that many. Like, it's like trying to get that across to a bunch of people, like the level of the importance of the rivalry and how important it's going to be seen and why it can't be sort of taken as a joke. But then, it's fascinating from a footballing perspective. Fascinating. If I'm a member of the police force, terrifying. If I'm a random member of the public in Southampton, oh good, that's going to be a time to avoid town. But
yeah.
You don't think we're going to be
right in the mix and attend the game? Who do you think one of the kids' season tickets going to, mate?
We're going to be bringing back for it then.
It's why I am slowly trying to convince my wife that no, I am not going to get killed, because hopefully I would be that stupid. But there we are.
That's it. Right. Well, on that exciting note, that is just about all we've got time for. We'll be back tomorrow with a match preview because there are still games to play. Believe it or not. Look, it is a fitting affair as we have the last Premier League game at Goodison Park.
Not the last ever game now, though, because the stadium's staying.
Which is something I'm sure we'll talk about tomorrow, but it's fascinating because they have definitely told fans that they can take their chairs with them. So... yeah, like you've seen people. I've seen the pictures of people there at the last game with like tape measures, getting there, working out what tools they need to take with them. So it's going to be an interesting day, that's for sure. But we will cover that in much more detail tomorrow. Until then, thank you very much for joining us, Zach, Oscar. Thanks for being here.
200, woo!
Yes, thank you for listening to 200 episodes of us talking about the most miserable season in Saints history. At least as we continue, hopefully there will be many more positives to take from. And then, I mean, maybe you'll all stop listening because you're all sadistic. Who knows? But until then, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.